off the grid. You could say that. Okay, cool. So episode 3 with Pedro, the health and education director. I want to start with like your personal background and kind of how you got into education, and did you study health or education in college?
No,
No, what did you study?
I studied business.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I studied business in college, got a degree on business administration, with a minor in marketing, psychology, and sociology. Well, nothing directly to do with what I do and did here in Kalu Yala. And so it just kind of happened that I landed here and worked out.
So when you were here as a student, correct?
Yeah.
So you came for business.
Came for business.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how did it come about that you got to be a director of health and education?
Well, it came about that I was a business student, and back then had a lot of students in Kalu Yala. I think 10 or 12 in the business program
Oh wow.
at that time. So there's a lot of students
So-
and like a lot.
For reference, we have one. No.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly.
crazy.
So it was like a much larger program. Lots of projects going on and a lot of skillful and smart people. And I came to Kalu Yala with the intention to just contribute and serve as well as I could.
Mhm.
And I started noticing that I would be just one more in the business program. And at the same time started to get interested in San Miguel and the projects there and what was happening there. And then by week 2 I switched to the education program and then did my whole semester there, did my projects there, got to meet some community members and got to start getting involved with the community. And at the time the education director, Angela, was transitioning out of Kalu Yala. And after Inspiration Week, she asked me if I wanted to continue her work.
Cool.
And so after some thinking, I decided to take on it, and I have
Nice.
been here since then.
So what was your student project?
I had two. At first, it was a soccer and volleyball club with the kids. And as I realized that soccer is something that they already have, and like having a club or a few practices wouldn't really make a huge change, so I just crossed soccer off by week 3 or 4, and then I was like, okay, focus on volleyball, which is my thing. And then at the same time I was running a needs assessment survey with 2 other students at the time, and I found out that the adults in the community had a huge interest in just learning more from Kalu Yala and from what they thought we would know or we would be experts on. So from there, I started organizing a health workshop
Oh,
with the
cool.
health students at the time. And that was it ended up being my main project. And so by week 9, we put together in the fonda that we usually eat at in San Miguel, we put together a health workshop on nutrition, on water sanitation, on healthy cooking, and another topic that I cannot remember right now. But that was the main project. We had like about 15 people showing up, and they expressed they liked a lot, and I think it was like a successful project.
Awesome.
And it was the first time that Kalu Yala, at least that's what I was told, that the first time that Kalu Yala put together an event like that for adults. The focus until that point had been
On the kids.
on the kids
Yeah.
mainly. So that was like a need and a want that Kalu Yala had. There wasn't the time for that. So I ended up focusing on that, and that was like a jump start for me to getting to know more people in the community and getting to understand better how to run an event in San Miguel, and so that
Yeah.
was my main project that
That's
semester.
awesome. And now you do like the clinic talks every weekend. And-
Yes.
Yeah. So is that another project as a director that you took on?
Yeah, that's another project that started with the student actually.
Awesome.
Last semester, a health student, Jillian, she wanted to get more involved in the clinic, and offer some sort of service to the clinic in San Miguel. So she started collecting information that we found out at the time was useful, so related with preventable diseases mostly, and compiling all of that information into posters and posting at the clinic. So
Cool.
she would switch that information every week, but just post there. That was last semester, and then this semester we decided to take one step ahead in the project, not only coming up with the information and posting, but also like talking about that
Yeah,
information,
presenting it live.
Yeah, exactly, because the clinic has a concentration of people there every morning because of their just how their work hours work, and so we use that the agglomeration of people to get their attention for 5-7 minutes, talk about something that we've researched, and just share that with them.
Do you find that being there, that they ask questions about the topic that you're talking about, and that helps more than like a poster?
Yeah, it's it's different having a poster in a wall and looking at it, reading it, and maybe or maybe not having questions, versus having someone sharing that information orally, talking and expanding to details and here and there, and having a kind of face-to-face interaction. I think the combination of both is more powerful than just one.
Yeah, for sure. So doing these like talks in San Miguel, how do you try to subvert the whole white savior complex? Do you want to talk about like what that is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the white savior complex is it's a topic that we reflect and we have in front of us all the time because we have to. It's something that exists. People going to a different community in another country and superficially looking at the community and thinking that they know what the problems are and how to solve them. And for me, that's what the white savior complex is: going to a place and assuming that you know better and your way is better, and you can help them or solve their issues for them. And it's a very selfish and egotistical thing. That's the white savior complex. And I think what we do in the clinic is more like sharing things that are interesting to us and things that we know are useful to our lives, and sharing with people who are in need for that. If they're in the health center, if they're waiting for a medical appointment, they have some sort of medical health situation in their life, and we share the information, and it's up to them to apply that or not. And that's not imposing, that's not trying to solve nothing for anyone. It's simply sharing information and I guess empowering people with information just like we are.
Yeah, I think a big part of it that I've kind of taken, of course I'm not in San Miguel nearly as much as you,
Mm-hmm.
but I think of them as neighbors to Kalu Yala.
Mm-hmm.
It's just neighboring towns,
Mhm.
part of the same community,
Mhm.
and we're just, it's a neighborly thing
Mhm.
to help each other. They help us with so much too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a touchy issue, but I don't think that we fall into that category.
I definitely don't think we do that. We've never, and that's something that we, as I said, it's in front of us. We confront it because it can happen if we're not watchful for our actions. We're very careful not to impose any views or anything. It's more about dialoguing and building relationships and exchanging and growing together. San Miguel historically is very similar to Kalu Yala. That area was forest and cattle fields 60 years ago when the first habitants came and started living there. And so they 60 years, 70 years ago went through the same challenges that we are going here with a different agenda, but they went through the same challenges. They came, they wanted to build a town, they wanted to live well, and they wanted to have a good life just like we do. So it's about sharing those experiences. We do in a certain way here, they did and do in a certain way there, and we definitely can learn from each other. And I think it's about that dialogue, and it's about keep on fostering and sharing those informations, and so both can grow together.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Symbiosis between these communities.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to talk about? I might butcher this. Basurologica, trashology.
Trashology, garbology,
Garbology?
or basurologia.
That.
Yeah, basurologia. Basurologia is a project that started this year, and it basically has trash as the center theme. We talk about trash.
Cool.
And what it is and where it comes from and our responsibility in it, and reflecting with the kids. Well, is this an issue? Yes or no? And they will tell us. Okay, if it's an issue, then what do you guys think? How can we solve this? Oh, and then they will. It's just what I said. It's the dialogue and like building that idea with them. But Basurologia has trash as the focus of the classes, just like how science has different areas in its focus, and any other area. Like we've just focused on trash and tried to understand it better, to come up with our own solutions for that problem. And it started in the beginning of this year, and it's been going very well. The kids have shown great interest in that, and it's been a fun project to run with the kids. It's a problem that exists in every community in the world, and here in Kalu Yala we have issues with trash too, and how to dispose it and where to dispose it properly, and watching for our own consumption or even exaggerated consumption sometimes. So it's something that everyone should be thinking and talking about, and we do that with the kids try to make it fun and interactive.
Yeah, I think we're trying to build a sustainable town, and there's nothing more progressive towards that goal than trying to reduce waste.
Exactly.
So like doing that all around here, like we've talked about how when you go to the city you buy 5 things, and you come out with a bag full of trash just in packaging. It's ridiculous. But like finding ways to responsibly dispose of it is awesome. And you've done that through this program, through education, putting up signs. I was there for one day of that, and waste baskets collection.
For Basurologia?
Yeah.
That's one of the projects. That's one of the projects. So we have lectures once a week with 1st and 5th grades in the school. So again, explaining or going in depth on what trash is and the 4 R's: reducing, reusing, recycling, and what do you call it in Spanish, recogiendo, to collect the trash, and going over each one of them. And so the trash bins that you saw and the signs are one part of that. So if we cannot reduce, if we cannot reuse, then we recycle. How do we recycle? Okay, these are the different categories of recycled materials, or recyclable materials, and okay, so now we need a container for them, so we can use a material that is abundant in community disposable amount, which is the plastic bottles, and making plastic bins out of that to then put the recycled trash, and then informing the community and informing the school on how to do that properly. So it's, as I said, trying to solve the solutions with the kids, with their input, with the materials and resources that we have available, and with the challenges that are there that we also face every day because we live in the community too. So coming up with the solutions with the kids, basically having as a starting point the lectures in the mornings. So
that's awesome. And the waste baskets look really cool
too. They do,
Trash cans are boring objects.
I know.
But when you make them out of those colorful materials, like
make it pretty hip.
Yeah, you might as well, right?
It's a fun like activity to do with the kids too, because it's like there's a whole process of collecting the bottles, making the holes, passing the wire, and the kids they enjoy those things.
Yeah, creating anything start to finish is like awesome to see, especially for a young person. Like to see something come from trash and then turn into something useful is really cool. Full cycle.
Exactly. And then for them to see and to realize that solving like an issue that seems unsolvable can be done simply.
Yeah.
If they want to, if they put their minds into it. You know.
They could do that at their home.
Yeah, and the same for us too. Like
For sure.
issues that seem big for us, like sustainable issues, sustainability issues. If we put our minds to it, if we start working and finding easy, simple solutions, we can achieve something.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. Do you want to move towards like a health side too?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
You tell me.
Cool. So I really wanted to talk about like traditional medicine versus like more shamanism, non-traditional, Ayurvedic. Is that?
That's the Indian
Okay.
traditional knowledge. Yeah.
Cool. So what do you think about like that whole comparison of like standard Western medicine practices versus maybe non-standard?
Well, I think that both are valid, both are useful, and they should be integrated. Modern society has solved its health issues through a very scientific, logical way in the past 200, 150 years, which has reduced mortality, which has prolonged lives, which had made people live longer and better, and that's great. But at the same time, you have available a huge amount of knowledge from ancient civilizations and ancient people that are available as well, and they have a different approach to these things. Whereas one is more pragmatic, scientific, logical. The other one it's more spiritual. It touches on like more subtle ways of healing people.
Yeah.
And so in my opinion, they go well together very well because there are different uses for both of them. Perhaps this more traditional knowledge works better for prevention. It works better for maintaining one's health, one's life healthy all throughout, and maybe that could, I would say, eliminate the necessity for traditional medicine. But if that comes to place, if a person actually needs like an urgent care, then we have all of those tools that have been developed over the years. So I think both are extremely important, and I don't prefer one over the other. But I personally have more, also because I'm not a doctor or a scientist or anything, and one for me is easier to understand and to grasp and to apply to my day-to-day life to prevent other things, and I think it's like a useful knowledge to be spread out.
For sure. Spirituality is a interesting topic. I think that plays a large part of mental health, you know. I'm kind of just starting my journey. I know you are along the way. You visit a shaman, and I think the whole mental and physical health go hand in hand no matter
absolutely.
what. And if your body's in pain, your mind is gonna react, and vice versa.
Exactly.
But I come from a family of traditional medicine. My mom is a nurse practitioner. My grandfather's an anesthesiologist, nurses and pharmacists all throughout. And my mom is getting into Ayurvedic medicine. Am I saying that right? Yeah, and it is interesting. It's really like, it's a lot of like dietary stuff and like spiritual, and like we're doing like Kundalini. Breath is so important. It's really interesting how all of that can affect like a holistic feeling of wellness.
Yes, absolutely, and that's why I think it makes sense for people to try that out, and I think, as I said, the emphasis of those practices and that knowledge is more on people taking ownership of their health, and I think other ways of doing it kind of like, you know, place a responsibility and place the burden of taking care of health to other people.
Yeah.
And that really disempowers individuals, and the power just goes to that person. Whereas in that sense, if you understand who you are more holistically and like different levels of your being, then you can start owning that and manipulating that and understanding, and that might prevent bad things from happening.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen it firsthand. I was born with a disorder of very physical, like it's called osteogenesis imperfecta. So it causes like a malfunction in the genealogy of like collagen. So I had a lot of like broken bones and torn muscles and stuff growing up. And ever since I've kind of gone down this spiritual journey and like been conscious of my mental health, I've been noticing a feeling of wellness, like physically. Not only just like mental clarity, but like physical wellness and like acceptance of pains and stuff. It's a very important thing.
Yeah, and you see, like that's empowering, you know, like if you can change your health and how you feel based on what you're thinking versus, you know, what you're intaking through like a pill or something, that which one would you prefer, right?
Yeah, you take ownership of it. And
so I think there's like a lot there to be explored and to be absorbed by our modern Western culture, and a lot of improvements to be made in the way we live based on, again, this knowledge that has been available but perhaps has been like put aside in the last centuries because of new technologies and new ways of doing and going about medicine that have emerged. And again, if they come together, I think that will make it like an ideal scenario. You have one for urgent care and like for, you know, critical situations, and the other one more for like day-to-day well-being, community living, and so I think no right or wrong or best or worse. We as society have used and have come up with this more recent way of doing things, which has its value. And I guess moving forward, like the more we integrate them too, I think the better for everyone.
I think the troubling factor is the systems are kind of hard set in place and constantly growing, but kind of just adding to those systems of like traditional medicine, just like not replacing, like you've been saying, but adding in new ideas is the way to go.
Exactly, because if a doctor looks at a patient with, you know, hypertension, instead of just looking at the blood pressure level, perhaps later on with integrated knowledge, okay, your blood pressure is high, but what about like other parts of your life? How's your emotions? How's your spiritual life? How's your family doing? Like, how's your relationship with your mom, with your dad, with your siblings, and how those things are interconnected? So I think like lots of explorations there to be done. I'm starting like my journey there as well, and it definitely makes a lot of sense to me, and it has improved my life a lot. And but I think it's like a very personal thing, and when a person like feels interested and called, then perfect. But you know, everyone has their own time on accessing that, and again, it's a matter of like sharing information, sharing knowledge, and sharing experiences, and people will then decide what to do with that.
I found that like ever since I kind of dove into spirituality, that you can only ask people so much, like, for guidance, but it's very person to person.
Exactly.
Like I'm not gonna respond to things the same way you are, because of everything we've ever been through, like circumstances leading up to who we are now.
And it's the whole idea of empowerment too. Like I think we live in a society where we expect that answers are given to us by specialists, by, you know, a degree, or by this and that, and perhaps we don't need all of it. We gotta find it like within ourselves, within who we are, with our experiences, with our circumstances, and again, empowerment.
I think this is an awesome place for that. Like, have you read Walden by Thoreau?
No.
It's all about going into the woods and kind of self-exploration and stuff, and that's what we're doing here.
And here we figure our stuff. We figure stuff out. Like, no one's gonna do it for you. You have to go out and do it yourself. And and it's really cool for like the age we are in, like again coming from the system where everything is kind of given to us and people kind of like supply us with like
Yeah.
all of our necessities, and here start taking ownership of those things and then making like more conscious decisions on what are the things that you actually want to take in as far as food, as far as information, as far as relationships, like taking more control in a life, in your life. And here it's easier, it's like more open to do that versus in a modern city society level where everything is just kind of in place and it's like a lot
Yeah.
harder to go around it.
Yeah, I think like every focus talk we've kind of had, the thing I've come away with is making conscious decisions, and that's the only way you can really live sustainably.
Exactly.
Like you have to like look at an issue and consciously choose to do something,
Mm-hmm.
not morally, I guess morally, right? Depending
Mhm.
on how you view it. But yeah, like you really need to make decisions yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And like when those systems are in place where you can go to a store and just buy something with a bunch of packaging, or
Mhm.
just Google something very quickly rather than looking for the answer in like experience or in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
This is a beautiful place, really.
Yeah.
It's also like the whole idea of like seclusion, but also within a really tight knit community.
Mm-hmm.
I've been kind of thinking about that recently because I've been doing a lot of self exploration here,
Mm-hmm.
but I've also never felt closer to people here.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
Yeah, and because here, like there's space, there's time to do both things. I
Yeah.
feel like you're experiencing the same set of circumstances with other people, and that brings like people together, right?
Yeah.
Like we're all basically the same age, living in the same place, going through the same challenges, and that brings us closer. And at the same time, because of this place that we live in, we have the time, because we don't have to, be stuck or we don't have to be in traffic for this many hours to go to this place, or we don't have like, an NBA game to go to, or we
Yeah.
don't have like technology or entertainment all the time. We have the time to
We have each other.
you have to each other and have the time to just go on a walk or go to the river, or and I think anytime they're also like in nature, just like surrounded by nature,
Yeah.
it makes that like internal journey like quicker,
Yeah.
because you start to see yourself in that and resonate with what's around you, and like that brings a sense of peace
Yeah.
and calmness and like reassurance, and like kind of like takes you back to who you truly are. Because again, in a city, when you see like a building or a car or a street or whatever it is, like you don't resonate with that. You don't like feel like, oh, I'm just like that building, like
Yeah.
look at that, and that makes us anxious and look for the next thing and the next thing. But
It's just
it's
a
like
constant.
it's a constant look for something that is not there, and it's not there. And here you feel like, okay, like I'm a part of something, people, animals, plants, air, like you feel like a part of a system, and you start to interact with the system and know that you're just one part
Yeah.
within this large system, not the part in a system that it was made by us.
For sure, yeah. When you're constantly on your phone, like on social media, or like disconnecting from reality, it's hard to realize that we're just another organism. Like take a walk in the woods and like realize that we are all of this.
Exactly.
It's just a part of the puzzle.
Exactly. It's just another part of the puzzle with the same things that make up for a tree or an ant or a dog, whatever,
Yeah.
are the same ingredients that makes us, just in a different form. And then you start, and I think that really calms people down, because you
Yeah.
like understand, okay, I don't need to do that much, I don't need to go that far, and then you start to realize, and then you have the time, like the mental space, you then, okay, then what and who am I truly,
Yeah.
and then make those conscious decisions that lead to sustainability. So coming back to the traditional knowledge situation and how that might be connected to sustainability and conscious decisions, like if you're taking empowerment of our actions and empowerment of who we are, understand we are in, then we might not need technological innovations to live longer, better, faster, and things like that,
Yeah.
with a more efficient fuel or whatever, if we just kind of slow it down and take it easy. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I think There's a weird thing with priorities going on now, like where we kind of like just want to like progress, but really, what is progression?
And where is the progress going to?
Yeah, ultimately, not something good. Because
Exactly.
we're just killing everything around us.
Yeah, and we have enough to live well already. Like we
Yeah.
have enough resources, we have enough houses, we have enough food, we have enough everything to just live us. So maybe we can just
Just calm down.
calm down and then like reevaluate, reassess the situation, make sure everyone has the same amount of everything, and then after we look around and everyone's good, okay, now we can maybe
Yeah.
move on again. So when I talk about like technological innovations, it's like not against that, but what's the point of that in this, as you said, like this progress that just keeps on going without
Yeah.
any reflection or purpose. So yeah, and then nature and being here is great for that. Just going down, okay,
For sure.
there, all right, this is where I'm going.
It's tough because like technology, there's a lot of like beautiful things about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like being able to share our
Yeah,
ideas
of
on this through all of this
Uh-huh.
is crazy.
Uh-huh.
But the production of these phones and this camera
Mm-hmm.
is a whole nother thing, and
Yeah.
then it's constantly progressing. So there's gonna be a new camera and a new phone a year from now, and like the waste that creates is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And then, yeah, being intentional and conscious about the use of those things, like
Yeah.
using it to share good information, good things,
Yeah.
versus not so much. So
You just gotta weigh it.
you just gotta wait, and like as you said, like just being conscious about the decisions that you make, and imagine a world where every single person makes only conscious decisions
Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah. Did you take many ethics classes in college?
No.
Well, they constantly bring up like the idea of utopia and stuff.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And it's like that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Just like everyone working for a greater good.
Mm-hmm.
But like, how when these systems are in place?
Yeah, and that's
it's such a paradox.
It is a paradox, and I think that's like the reality that our generation is facing, like realizing those things and what's possible versus what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and not being either or, but like being with both, being realistic in where we are, but also like dreaming on where we should be and where we can go and what's the ideal scenario, and just kind of like going towards there, maybe not reaching that in our lifetime, but like taking one step, and so our children will take the other one.
Yeah.
Just kind of keeps on going. But I think having that ideal scenario in mind helps to give, I would say, even societies a direction of where to go.
Yeah. How do you think politics kind of plays a role? Because I think that's, as just citizens, that's kind of how we have our say in like big picture stuff. But like, do we have to run for office? Do we just vote every year? Like, because how do we make this happen?
Yeah,
It's such a complex issue.
It is, and I think politics does play a huge role in that, because, again, back to being realistic. Realistically speaking, governments control the system in a way. They provide a framework for systems to work with, and whether we like it or not, those guys there are, making the rules of the games that we are playing. And I think there are many layers to that discussion, but and there are many different ways to get involved with that. One is just being aware and being a good citizen, and using the power of voting, and voting with an intention, voting for a cause, voting, being surrounded with good information. And like in a more proactive level, you can run for a position, or you can help someone who it's capable and has good intentions and wants to change the game to get there, or you can work for something or someone that is already there with a good agenda, and that person will need like a staff. Or there are organizations like the UN, for example, speaking broadly, that will hold countries accountable on policies and how they're doing in relationship to sustainable goals and the world's big picture demands. So there are many different ways to get involved with that, but definitely the first step is just becoming aware, which is something that I think that our generation
is
moving from, but at the same time is moving towards.
Okay.
I think with the last couple of years and what has happened in the States and in the UK and where I come from in Brazil too, like the systems are kind of shaking and
people notice.
People notice and starting to notice like how directly they impact our lives, and that I think that's bringing people's attentions back to it, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But now, how do we, as a society, go about it, and us as a generation, how do we participate more on that? How do we make sure we have a voice? How do we make sure that politicians have in their agenda sustainability, keep the freedom movements in their agenda, and all of that? So it's tricky, but I think that we started as a generation, like when we were younger, like very away from it, but the circumstances and what's happening in the world, it's bringing people closer to the debate, in whichever side people are taking a side at least, and it's something that I think 10 years ago would not happen.
Do you think the kind of increase, like communication via like technology and social media, plays a part in that?
Yeah, people have a voice now that everyone will listen to on their political standing, which creates conflict and sometimes dialogue, but like people just have a voice and their voices are spread out, and people are more aware of like small details and even gossips of what's happening in the political world, which is good. And again, like making good use of the technology and the resources that we have. So I think politics definitely play a huge role like on the world that we live in, whether we like it or not. Even like in our utopic view of the world, there wouldn't be a government, there wouldn't be anyone controlling our lives, but the reality is that there is, and we gotta work what we got. We gotta work with what we got, and if we want to change it, we want to, in my opinion at least, we will have to work with it and not against it, because I don't think that that's very productive.
I think it's interesting how, not to like play into Trump's narrative, but the idea of like fake news or like spreading fake ideas is so much easier with the internet, like people can see headlines and not read articles and share stuff that might not be completely accurate, and that's kind of scary as well.
Super.
On both sides.
Definitely.
I think being conscious and deliberate with your word, even on the internet, is huge in like politics as well.
Definitely. And not only fake news, but also just like superficial opinions on stuff, like with social media, like a video that summarizes the history of American democracy in 2 minutes. That's what people want, and they expect. I want to understand all of the topic in 2 minutes, which is not going to happen. They will get like details here and there, and then from that information, they will make their opinions that will probably not match with what's actually happened and why that actually happened. So not only fake news, but superficial information, which is like again the paradox with this mountain of information that we have. People,
but everyone wants it quick and they want it like concise,
and it's not gonna happen. Like you're not gonna fully grasp the complexity of the world as it is with quick social media. It's just not gonna happen. So there's both, and that's the tricky part about social media. It's like such a powerful tool, but it can create like some very bizarre circumstances too, as we see.
I think something that hit home during a Knots Focus talk was the idea of mastering one area and not spreading yourself too thin, and I think that comes with like the responsibility of learning anything. Like you have to really dig into something if you really want to like know about it and like be aware and like try to evoke change. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to know a little bit of everything. I think we need to know a lot about the important like issues at
Uh-huh.
hand to be able to
Exactly.
solve them.
Yeah. Or why not knowing a lot about a lot of things, right?
Yeah,
I
might as
think
well.
we have the time, like in our lives, to do that, and that's how I like to see um, life as an experience of learning about things and being interested in the world and trying to understand how it works and what governs it and the rules of it. And I think coming back to spirituality, like it plays a role in trying to understand how everything works and why it works and how to live with it. But and I think knowing a lot about other things, but having one then mastery to be like a useful tool within that bigger scenario. But and I think that's another challenge for our generation too, to really dig in the complexity of the world. Like we,
Yeah.
as you said, like you want things quick and fast and concise, and we're not gonna get the world as it is if we keep walking on that path. And so, how do we go about that?
What are some things that you're kind of digging into as of recently? Spirituality. I know sustainability is kind of like in your family.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's in the blood. Yeah.
Yeah, volleyball was a big thing for you.
That's the thing that I think I'm the best at.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, like it's the thing that I spent most hours working with and practicing
Yeah.
and even thinking about it. So definitely like my area of expertise as far as like practice hours.
Cool.
Yeah, not very useful, but
I mean, kind of. It
Yeah.
took you a lot of places.
it did. It was a what's it called, like a bolt that took me to many different places. So super grateful for that. But answering your question, as I said, I graduated in business, so I've learned about that, and now really interested in education and the role that it plays in all of those things that we're talking as the roots for any healthy person to live in this crazy world and to produce change and to produce good
Yeah.
results and to have a healthy life. And I see education and overlapping with health as the root base for a healthy society, a healthy
Wow.
world.
Yeah.
So trying to understand the all levels of it. And here in Kalu Yala, I got to work like in the front line, like in a more micro level, like in the classroom, and seeing the needs of systems and needs of the schools and how to go about conveying a certain type of information for kids, and just like all of the details on that. That's like more like a micro level. There's the macro level, which is the
Yeah.
political side, the systemic, the policy making side. So how do we make sure that these guys here in the front line have enough resources to then impact the lives of the kids that are teaching in a good way? Because if they don't, then that interaction will create something kind of out of control and probably not what we want to see.
Yeah.
So trying to integrate both and moving forward to something
Something.
to something. So yeah, I really like the concept of education and what it can produce
Mm-hmm.
to the world and its complexity and its and I would say like right now, after leaving the micro level, I'm really interested in the macro level and just understanding more.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think the way of fixing like school systems would be to kind of work with the systems in place and like on small levels like educating like teachers, professors, or do you think it would be creating new systems and like independent schools that follow your view?
I think they can happen simultaneously.
Yeah.
In most countries, I would say, not with 100% of confidence, but all countries have some level of public schools, and so schools that are funded and managed by the government.
Yeah.
which is necessary. Like not everyone will have the funds to go to a private school. Not everyone will have the geographic access to go to like an independent, cool, hip school.
Yeah.
So you need the government to like reach those unreachable places and provide education for people. And you have like other projects that can happen simultaneously, and to provide innovation, to create new ways of teaching, to create new pedagogies and things like that. So they can and they should go together and hand in hand, and one tackling its area of expertise, and the other aiding that, and definitely working together.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of deserves, like, I mean, it's easy to say everyone deserves equal education, but it's hard to put in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really hard, and
Yeah.
and then that's the whole discussion of maybe decentralizing education. Maybe
Yeah.
federal governments shouldn't be responsible for the entire country's education. Maybe again, in a perfect world, each city and each community will have the funds and the tools to create their own like little education system based on their context and their culture and their type of living.
But then
what happens?
like,
And it's
ahead.
complicated.
Yeah.
That's complicated. But what happens now is that you have one master plan. For example, in the United States, you have one master planner that's basically dictates how most of the system will work, and that tends not to work for everyone. And it's also like a big burden, like how it's a very, very complex issue, very complicated task in hand, like how to organize education for millions of children, for millions of teachers, for millions of parents. So there's that debate of centralizing versus decentralizing education. And
yeah, I think the issue that comes with that is like certain areas are not going to be funded as well as others because of like whether it be like natural resources that they don't have access to, or like whatever, like the economy in certain areas, like we're just putting really we're putting like the poor areas like in a place where they're not being as educated, and it's just going to be a constant decline. But I don't know, maybe somewhere in between.
yeah, exactly. And so maybe perhaps in a big city where the resources and these resources are concentrated, perhaps in that place it would be easier for organizations, independent organizations, to tackle education, for
Yeah.
example. But in like more rural areas and more in areas that are far away from where the resources are, then perhaps the government could take care of that. And that's what I'm saying by like kind of dividing the task, which is also like another complicated task
Yeah.
of collaboration and dialogue and bringing all of those stakeholders together and aligning them towards the same goal, which is really, really complicated with so many interests in line, and with companies fighting for their lives, for their financial lives, and governors trying to get reelected. So it's a lot of variables when you have a very clear problem situation in place. And again, it's the system that we live in.
Yeah, and you got to work with it.
You gotta work with it. So, perhaps if you're a really smart guy, you can go and help come up with a strategy on how to combat that. Or if you're really good community gatherer, I guess, just bringing all
Bring
these
the
people
people,
together in the same room and talking government, for-profits, non-profits, teachers, labor unions, and okay, like we need to make sure everyone has education. How do we go about this? Okay, labor unions are going to do this. Teachers, you need to be responsible for that. Complicated.
Yeah, I can see you being in that role, like just bringing all the people together to kind of let's figure this out. Let's all get in a room.
I could make a Facebook event for that.
Let's talk about trash.
And yeah, there's something that it should be. Oops, sorry if there's anyone down there.
Yeah, there's some more if you want it.
Yeah, it's and again, like making a curriculum, like a state level curriculum that has as a priority the trash, that has a priority traditional knowledge, it has a priority self knowledge, that has a priority, you know, all of the things that we know that are important but perhaps are not being talked about in school.
I think so Ashton and I did a podcast a couple weeks ago and we talked about how you kind of have to factor in the idea of like teaching strategies as well as just like curriculum and like what they're learning, because everyone learns different. And I think it's kind of like a memory based like system that we're in now, where like you're given information and then you're tested on that information a few weeks later, and it's not necessarily information retention, it's just
repetition, and just like studying for the test and repeating and
and then go to the next thing.
And and you see, like that's why it's such a big test, because okay, in one hand we need to make sure everyone has education, and the other spectrum of the issue, for those who already have that education,
like how do they learn,
how do they improve that, how do they make sure it works for everyone, and how do they make sure that your human needs are being met, not your labor needs, because the education system as it is, it was made to create efficient workers, to make sure they worked well in an assembly line or in a company or in a factory or whatever. So that's how the system is structured, not to make us live
like fulfilled lives
and realize ourselves. So as we're thinking on, you know, spreading the system, perhaps the system it's not good enough to be spread out. But it's, and again, and that's why it's so important to like dig in those issues and understand the complexity of it, because, and like how there's no right or wrong, because at the same time, even if it's like a shitty system that will work for people to only get jobs, in certain situations that might be a great thing for a certain community, or to just go and get jobs because they're not getting that, you know. So, and that's why I like the idea of decentralization, because then each community can figure out what's the best thing for that community. Like in a community where there's very low very high unemployment rates, then okay, let's figure out how kids
can get jobs.
And in the States where unemployment is low, okay, everyone is good, everyone's sad, now how to make sure everyone is happy. So
it's crazy. And then you gotta shift, because those things are gonna change too.
Exactly, and you gotta create, and you gotta keep like asking the system, adapt to new situations and new technologies and new things that will arise, and it just keeps on going.
I think back to like not to make it too big picture, but like systems put in place that are like systems that are like put in place, like the U.S. government in the 1700s. We need to adapt, and like I think amendments are a cool way of doing that, and like systems like core curriculums on like a national scale need to be able to adapt on a regular basis, because like especially now we're living in a really fast environment.
And it's really, really hard for government as it is structured and organized to keep up with all of those fast changes, because you know, like a new social movement emerges, and that movement needs a voice. Then between when that arises and when that becomes like something official state-wise, like there's a whole slow process and so many steps that it seems like society is changing much faster than governments and even organizations can adapt to. And it's something like we learn in the business school, that like the best organizations and the ones that live longer and more successful are the ones who are able to adapt to those things quicker, because you know VHS, like the thing, VHS was a great thing, but if you don't adapt to the DVD and the Blu-ray and the Netflix, then you're gonna
Blu-ray lasts for like 2 years.
It's not even a thing anymore. No one cares about that. So you know, like, and for a government to adapt to those things in a system that is so blown up, and again, in the States or Brazil or China or India, like one organization that organizes or tries to organize the life of millions or even billions of people. That's a lot of work, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of hope that we put on those people there. Like, hey, I'm voting for you. Figure out my shit.
Yeah, it's
not
almost
gonna-
like it needs to be not an individual person making like we need gods up there doing this.
Or we can be the guy, as you're saying, like
Yeah.
the conscious decisions, right?
Yeah, yeah. If those people are making those conscious decisions, but it's so complicated that like
Yes.
every conscious decision has negative effects too,
Yeah.
especially on that big of a scale.
Exactly. Like you're in that level, and you're gonna make decisions that, let's say, like that. Back to the education thing. Okay, I'm gonna spread out education here, and then, but now the rural people have education, but the city people have less education because the budget is tight. So it's very complex, and you have to get away from the polarity and like the right or wrong ideas, because it's every solution that we come up with, there will be like a next problem that arises, and until
Yeah.
we figure something better out.
I don't want to like make this like podcast about my political opinions, but I really do think decentralization in government is like a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Like think locally and like have global morals that like you can impact your local community with. And Kalu Yala is a really good example of that.
Yeah.
We're doing this area, but we're doing it the best way we know how.
Yeah.
For like a global thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that theoretically makes a lot of sense. But there there are a lot of barriers to that. You
Yeah.
know, how are you, there's, it's just very relative. Like you can decentralize some places but not all of them, because
Camera just died.
oh,
We can keep going on audio though.
okay. Because yeah, like you decentralization, back to decentralization, I lost my train of thought. You, like, I think it will work for some, and it won't work for other places in other contexts. Some countries in the world might need like a centralized power telling them what to do, whereas some others might be ready to be independent. I think I see nations and states very similar to the human journey, like sometimes, or not sometimes, but for a child, you need to guide that child, you need to tell that child what to do and what's good and what's not and all of that. But for adults, you can like let that person make its own decision. Sometimes not even, like for adults, like some adults will need like intervention and help and guidance. So it's
anyone knows everything. Right?
Exactly. So I see nations and states like a lot like that, and that just like reinforces like the maybe the bottom line topic of our conversation, that everything is very relative and there's no like silver bullet for any problems in the world right now.
Yeah.
But there are different decisions for different places with different problems.
Yeah. There's no great answer. There's a lot of good ones.
We hope there was one.
Yeah.
But there's none.
Yeah. It goes back to the whole spirituality thing too. There's no one way for anyone to live.
We gotta figure it out.
I think. Have you ever heard of the book Tribe? With Sebastian Junger? Talks about kind of the idea of us as like hunter-gatherers and living in small communities, and I always think about how far we've come from that. We're living in skyscrapers with thousands of people that we don't know, and maybe we're just supposed to live in small communities, and something happened along the way, so I guess not. But it's interesting to think about how humans have changed so much more than every other species on Earth, and then we have these complex ideas about the systems that we have created. It's such it's a weird thing.
It is a weird thing, and
and
that's why spirituality it's an important topic to be discussed and approached, because I think those situations were and are created because we live too much in the mental and like the mind and the ego, and what's better for me, what makes more sense, what's more logical, and we define ourselves as our personalities, and we define ourselves as how we think, and we forget to think of other elements of our being, so
Yeah.
mind is great, and mind is a tool that humans have, but it's not all of it. In my opinion, we have a spirit that should be taken into consideration in that conversation. Perhaps the spirit doesn't need a skyscraper, or
Yeah.
more skyscrapers, or more stuff to put inside the skyscrapers. The spirit perhaps needs nature and like people and conversations and love and affection and things like that. And the mind can aid those things and find ways for those things to happen. But maybe it doesn't need to be that complicated.
Yeah. Maybe
But
the ego needs all the possessions,
hmm
How do you differentiate ego and consciousness?
I think ego is our mind, and consciousness is more like our spirit.
Okay.
And consciousness, there's consciousness and then there's ego inside of it. I think consciousness is a lot bigger. It's our morals, it's our sense of what's right, what's wrong, what feels right, what intuitively feels like it's the best thing for everyone. And ego is a useful tool in the process of knowing that, how do I as a person, as an individual, achieve that?
Yeah.
What are my needs, and how do I think, and do I process the information that my consciousness is absorbing from my surroundings? So, like if you were in a car, the consciousness would be the driver, and the ego would be like kind of like the passenger, giving input here and there, playing the song, maybe like saying, yeah, go right or go left, but consciousness will make the final decision.
Wow. I've never thought about it like that. That's awesome. Yeah. Maybe let's go get some Taco Bell.
Yeah. And then, and consciousness will say, maybe.
I'm kind of hungry.
Yeah, and like maybe the ego would convince that it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Through like the logic, through rationality, but perhaps
maybe not so much.
Perhaps the driver wasn't even hungry.
Yeah. Wow. It's all like surrounding based,
Mm-hmm.
Like you can convince yourself of anything based on your surroundings.
Yeah, and I like that. It makes sense. It doesn't make sense. Maybe things don't need to always make sense all the time.
Maybe we don't have to look into everything so much.
Maybe not. Maybe we're just making this all too complicated.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's how it was supposed to be.
Maybe.
No conclusions.
Yeah. That's kind of been the theme of this podcast. Maybe.
Maybe. Question mark should be the title of it.
Yeah. Question everything.
Question everything.
I'm cool with stopping it here. I need to get some stuff done before dinner. If you're cool with that.
Yeah.
But I'd love to do another one. This has been an awesome talk.
Yeah.
I didn't see it going this far.
Me neither.